Hey ladies, thank you for joining me for our Bible study series called Beauty Out of Brokenness. This is lesson 4, and the title of the lesson is Hope While You Wait. There was a time in my life where I remember waiting played a much bigger part in my life than it does now. I remember waiting for the teacher to grade my paper. I would just be on pins and needles waiting to see what that grade would be. I remember when we would be waiting for test results or a phone call from a doctor's office, and sometimes it would be days or weeks. I also remember waiting for letters to come in the mail to hear from somebody. And then we would have to wait for phone calls. We'd have to wait for your brother or sister to get off the phone, and you would just hope that you wouldn't miss that call that you were waiting for. But today it seems like waiting is something that we don't do very much of anymore. We don't have to wait for food. We can just go to fast food real quick and get that. We don't have to wait for things to come in the mail. You order on Amazon and you can get it the next day. And the doctor's office, those test results, you can find them online quickly. And then those papers in school, so many times schoolwork is now on the computer and it is automatically graded by the computer. So waiting is not as much of our life in America here. Now it may be in other countries, but waiting is really difficult. And we're going to see in our story today that Ruth had to wait on an answer to a very big question in her life. And we're going to hear some advice from Naomi that I think can apply to all of us. Because even though we may not have to wait for food or packages or phone calls, there are things that we have to wait on spiritually in our life. And especially when it comes to people in our life and our family. And there are some things that we may have to wait for years. And there are some things that we may never really find an answer to while we're here on this earth. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let's study the scripture and let's see what the Bible has to say about hope while you wait. Let's turn to Ruth chapter 3 and let's start with verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? Naomi knows that the harvest is nearly over, and she wants Ruth to have a husband. She knows that Ruth is going to be vulnerable. She's a widow. She is young. She is a foreigner. And even though this would benefit Naomi, I believe in this situation, Naomi is looking out for Ruth and she wants to help her. And this would be the best situation for Ruth in this time period in the world here and where they live. And so Naomi has come up with a plan. Let's look at verse 2. And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. So threshing floors were always in danger of being robbed. And so for this reason, someone would sleep on the floor until the grain was removed and taken to safe storage. And Boaz would have been working there. And Boaz, with just his presence there among the workers and the servants, shows that he is a great man. He's a very humble man. He can work alongside workers and work hard. And he also was a wealthy man. And he was overseeing this because he doesn't want to lose any of his profit, because people would want to come in and steal. This would be something that they could sell or they could eat. And let's look at verse 3. Let's see what Naomi tells Ruth to do. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. So she tells Ruth pretty much, you need to go freshen up. Freshen up, put on some perfume, dress up, look nice, and go over there to where Boaz is and watch him, but don't let him see you, so you know where he's going to be tonight. And so even though this was a very bold move, Naomi is probably basing her plan on the fact that Boaz and Ruth are attracted to each other. or I don't think Naomi would have had Ruth go do this bold plan this evening. Let's start with verse 4. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me, I will do. And she went down unto the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn, and she came softly, and uncovered his feet, and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight, that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. So this was startling to Boaz. Whenever you see this word behold, it really means it stands out. Something big happened here. And even though this seems like a very strange custom to us, and it also seems like it would be inappropriate, it actually was very appropriate, and it was okay. Then Ruth was doing something that was very unusual, so she was counting on Naomi's advice here. She was totally trusting her. She was stepping out on faith to do this. And this reminds me of when you have people in your life, maybe godly people or spiritual people, or somebody who is older, someone who would be more like a mentor to you, and they give you advice. They are wanting what's best for your life. And many times that advice comes from wisdom. It comes from discernment from God. And in this situation, it was good that Ruth followed Naomi's advice. And I hope there's someone like that in your life, or maybe you are that someone to somebody else in their life. So it's a very serious thing when you do give advice. And when you receive advice, to listen. Let's look at verse 9. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. So God's way may seem strange to the world, like this whole plan seems very strange, probably even to Ruth. And many times God calls us as Christians to do something that may seem unusual to the world. And God's working this out for Ruth. And so Ruth may have felt that she was disqualified to go in and approach this wealthy landowner, but it was because of her being so poor and needy that made her qualified to even ask. You don't need a kinsman redeemer if you are wealthy and if you are okay. And in this case right here, Ruth qualified to ask this of Boaz because of her need. And this is a parallel of how it is with us in our life. In order for us to be saved, we must see our need and see that without Christ we are nothing. And because we are so poor spiritually and so needy, that we can come to Christ and ask Him to be our kinsman redeemer, to be our Savior. And that's why this story is so wonderful. It's such a parallel of how God works in our life, just like Boaz is in Ruth's life here. And then when she asked him to put that portion of the garment over her, that was the legal way of claiming protection and redemption. Let's go down to verse 10. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. So Boaz is complimenting her. He's saying some really great things about her character. He's even saying, you haven't been chasing after these young guys. And that's never God's way. If you're single, the best thing to do is sit and wait for God to bring someone into your life. And he says, he's noticed here, she hasn't chased after the rich or the poor guys in this city. And also the people in the city have noticed it. They see that she's a virtuous woman. And this phrase here is only used 2 other times in the Bible. It's used in Proverbs 12:4 and in Proverbs 31:10. And he is saying here that Ruth is a woman of excellence. She is honorable. She has great character. This was a really big thing here. And Ruth, in this situation, it was in the dark. She could have done whatever. And whatever you are in the dark is what you really are. Many times, I think that we think if nobody's watching or if nobody's around, then we can do whatever. Nobody's going to know. But keep in mind, God is always there. And what's done at night will come to light. I've heard that phrase many times. And so the darkness is not the time to be taking chances. And it's time to show your character in that time. When it's the darkest and it's the hardest, that's when your character should be shining through. And that's what her character shined through during this very difficult time in her life. During this time of moving away, losing her husband. And her character just shined through. Let's look at verse 12 and 13. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning. So thousands of years later, we have the luxury to know how this scene is going to play out. But Ruth does not. Ruth has did everything she was told to do, and now she has been told to wait. He tells her it's going to be okay. He even tells her, lie down until morning. He doesn't want her to leave in where it was not safe, where she would have been not protected. So he tells her to lie down, and apparently she goes to sleep. She's resting in knowing that Boaz is going to take care of this. Whether it's him or if it's the other kinsman, she's going to be taken care of and protected. And let's look at verse 14. And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. So here he didn't want her to go back into Bethlehem in the dark. And he also wanted to protect her character. And he says, don't let this be known to anybody else. He tells the other people who are there. And so Ruth's situation hasn't changed yet. She is still a poor widow, depending on the kindness of a man that she really doesn't know that well. And if Ruth had been like most of us, we would have wrestled with doubts and fears all night long. We probably wouldn't have slept. We would have been on our phone Googling what happens if there's another kinsman redeemer that's closer than this kinsman. We would have been trying to figure out all kinds of things. And we sometimes get ourselves all worried and anxious over things when we need to just rest and be still and let God work things out. He says he will, and he tells us to rest in him. So God has promised his children far more than Boaz ever promised Ruth. And we have so much hope. We have hope of eternal life. We trust God to save us, but so many times we don't trust him to take care of the needs in our life. Let's look at verse 15. Also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. So boy, he was very generous here. He showed much grace and generosity by giving her all this 6 measures of barley. This would lasted her several days. And so he's given himself time to work this out, and he's telling her she's going to be okay. He's going to take care of her even if this other kinsman doesn't. And so many times we look to other things to satisfy us in our life. And I thought this was really neat that in the Bible, so many times, and I didn't study all of them, but Jesus says he's these different things to us in our life. Are you thirsty? He's living water. Do you have a hungry heart? He's the bread of life. Do you feel the weight of sin in your life? Well, he's the resurrection and life. Do you feel lost? Well, he is the way. He says that He is all you need, and He says He's the great I am. And there's so many other things in the Bible that He says that He is. And basically, He's everything to you. He's everything to me. Let's look at verse 16. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "Who art thou, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law." And this is also another lesson here. Boaz giving her something before she left. Many times we're able to help somebody. Somebody comes into our life and we're able to meet a need that they have. It may be a physical need. It could be food, could be money. It could be a spiritual need. It could be some kind of encouragement. It could be just us being there for them. And whenever you can, always try to meet the needs in somebody else's life. And in this story, Naomi's empty days are coming to an end. Remember back when she said that she was so empty? She's been blessed over and over in her life. Let's look at verse 18. Then said she, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day." This is some very good advice that Naomi gives to Ruth that we can use in our own life. She tells her, she says, sit still. And she also tells her that Boaz will not rest until this is taken care of. And this is the same advice that I can give you in your life. There's something big, you're waiting for an answer, or you're waiting for something to work out. It may not work out the way you want it to, but sit still. And God, He loves you so much. He's going to take care of that. And He also is going to keep working until this is worked out. While you're sleeping, He is working. He's not sleeping. While you are sitting there worrying and being anxious, He's not worried or anxious. He's going to work this out in your life for your good. So God was answering Naomi's prayer, more exceeding abundantly beyond all that she could ever think of at this point in the story. And she's telling Ruth, sit still and you wait, and we're going to see what Boaz does here. So I would like to wrap this lesson up with this thought. When we sit still and let God work in our life, we need to trust Him to accomplish what's best for you, what's best for me in His timing. We need to listen quietly, and when you listen quietly, you will hear the answer, and while you rest, God will work. So I want to encourage you, ladies, take hope while you're waiting that God is taking care of the situation in your life, and just keep trusting and keep waiting patiently for Him. Thank you for joining me for this lesson, and next week will be our last lesson, and we will see how this story ends in the book of Ruth.